Hey guys, what's up? My name is Sky Webb and I'm here to talk about a true crime story that I cannot get off my mind. But before I get started, I just want to put out a little disclaimer that I mean no harm to any of the victims or the victims' families, and I wish everyone who was hurt within this story the utmost peace and solace, either in rest or in recovery. With that out of the way, happy True Crime Thursday. I just want to give a little shout out and thank you to all of the people who suggested cases last week, and in the last few weeks I've had more cases suggested than I've ever had before, so I really appreciate it. But this case definitely stuck out to me the most and I'm really excited about it. Today we're going to be covering the unsolved murder of Crystal Rogers. Crystal Rogers was 35 years old and she lived in Bardstown, Kentucky with her 5 beautiful children and her boyfriend, who was called Brooks Huck.
Bardstown has always been a nice little town. We've never had any problem here.
So she had already split up with her ex-husband, who was the father of 4 of her children, and they remained on pretty decent terms, like they were on good terms, and they shared custody so the kids could go from sort of household to household as they pleased or as it was like convenient for the parents. And then Crystal had another child with Brooks, and that child was only 2 years old at the time of the disappearance. So Crystal had a really big, loving, close family, and she was especially close to her mum, who was named Sherry, and her sister, who was named Brooke. I'm sorry if there's any confusion, but her boyfriend was Brooks with an S and her sister was Brooke, just Brooke. So on the 5th of July 2015, Crystal's mum Sherry started to get a little bit worried about Crystal. She couldn't get a hold of her, and it was a little bit unlike Crystal to just like ignore her. Like, it wasn't very often that she would just not get a response from Crystal at all, so she was starting to stress a little bit. Usually Crystal was just very reliable. She was a very organized person, and it wasn't like her to do that. And since this was so unusual for her to not respond, Sherry wasn't the only one who was a little bit worried. Her sister Brooke was actually worried as well, because her calls and her texts were going unanswered as well, but they hadn't actually said this to one another. They were both separately worried by themselves. So unlike Sherry, Brooke decides to call Crystal's boyfriend Brooks and basically share her concerns with him and say, hey, what's up? Where's Crystal? She's not answering me. Is she okay? Do you know like what's going on? Fill me in, I'm a little bit worried. And he basically said, no, I don't know what's going on. I haven't seen her since 2 days ago, since the 3rd of July on the Friday. So Brooks said that the last time that he saw her, she was sitting on the couch playing like a video game type or app or whatever on her phone, and he went to bed without her. And then he said that he woke up the day after and she was gone, but he just assumed that she was spending the 4th of July with her cousin. So he didn't feel the need to even try to contact her. He didn't even attempt to call or text or, you know, reach out to her. So he just didn't know where she was. And her sister Brooke thought this was extremely alarming and was like, that is very odd. Why would you not care to like message her and double check and assure where she is? It's been 2 days now, she's not answering anyone. Not normal. So she called Sherry and she let Sherry know, and Sherry freaked out.
I got a phone call at that minute. I just panicked.
So Sherry freaked out and she contacted the police and tried to file a missing persons report. But Sherry didn't call the police to make this report. She was actually driving down to the sheriff's office so that she could do this in person and like sort of, you know, stress how worried she was. And as she was doing this, her son, so Crystal's brother, got a phone call from a family friend of someone who had seen Crystal's car parked on the side of the road. So now the brother and the dad, they both raced down to this parking, well, it's not a parking area, but wherever this area was where the car was parked, they raced down there to suss out the car and see like what the fuck's going on.
They've seen the keys in her car and seen her phone sitting in the passenger seat with her purse. I thought the worst.
And as soon as they get there, they can see that Crystal's car has the keys still inside. It also has her phone and her handbag. So it's very clear that she didn't like book it out of town. Like she's not walking around with her phone and her money and her, you know, her belongings. They're all in the car, and so are the keys. So it's alarming to say the least. So they actually call the police themselves. They call an investigator and get an investigator down to the car so that they can check it out straight away and see what's going on. So once the investigator gets there, he basically finds all these red flags, like right off the bat. Obviously her belongings being in there, that's a red flag. The keys being in there, that's a red flag. And then they even notice and determine that the driver's seat was pushed far enough back that it wouldn't really be appropriate for Crystal to drive, if that makes sense. Like based off of her height and like how long she was, she would have had to sit closer to the steering wheel to actually be able to drive like without dying. And so they could tell someone else had actually driven her car, which obviously is a big red flag. And this was actually really lucky that they were able to determine that so quickly, because obviously by the time she was reported missing, she'd already been missing for 2 days because her boyfriend Brooks hadn't fucking told anybody. So they were sort of at a disadvantage, because obviously when people go missing, the first 24 hours, first 48 hours are very, very important, especially in kids. Obviously Crystal wasn't a kid, but like it's important. So this was lucky that they sort of already had signs pointing towards like an abduction or something like foul play going on, rather than her just like wandering off. Like it was good that they had some sort of direction at this point. So they started a huge search and they searched the nearby areas. They searched nearby her house and her house. They searched the car and the nearby areas to the car. They even had police sniffing dogs on the scene, and they were like doing surveying areas and searching as well. And then the police made a public appeal on the news, and then the family took to social media to try and ask for help and assistance and, you know, raise awareness there. So after 48 hours of Crystal being missing, the town really did get together and they started a really, really big search, to be honest. And it was really, really hot weather. It was hot temperatures. They're going through swamp areas and big open fields and places where weeds are like up to their chest. Like they're putting in a lot of like actual physical work to be searching these areas, and they're doing it for Crystal and for her family and her kids, and you know what I mean? They really came together. But the one person who wasn't searching was Brooks, her boyfriend. How does that make sense? The police found this really, really weird, and they started to sort of notice that his attitude was quite detached from what was going on and the situation, and he didn't really seem all that, you know, concerned about the searches, and it was just weird. So they decided that they'd bring him into questioning, and I mean, he was the last person to see her alive as far as they could tell, so he was pretty important in the case, and they just wanted to know a little bit more at this point. So they questioned him, and he said that on the Friday night, which was the last night she was, you know, safe and seen and alive, that they went to his family farm. Just him, Crystal, and their son, their 2-year-old. He then claims that they went home around midnight. They drove home, and then once they were home, Crystal sat on the lounge and she played her little game on her phone, and he went to bed, and then again the next morning she was just gone. So he basically recounted the exact same thing that he told her sister, was that, well, I assumed she was spending 4th of July with her cousin, so I didn't really bother, like whatever. But the weird thing is that she didn't take her son, her 2-year-old, and this was not like Crystal at all. Everybody who knew Crystal, from her friends to her family to her kids' friends to her hairdresser to her friggin' dog groomer, knew that Crystal never went anywhere without Eli, without their 2-year-old son. She literally never went anywhere without him. He was the youngest child, like brand new kid, like he's only 2 years old, and the only child that she shared with Brooks, and everybody knew that she actually wasn't comfortable leaving Eli with Brooks, which is kind of unfortunate if you're going to share a kid with someone that you should be able to leave him with him, but for whatever reason, and people knew it, she just didn't feel comfortable leaving Eli with Brooks. So he went everywhere that she went. So for her to go spend 4th of July with her cousin might have made sense if she had have taken Eli, but to leave him there, everyone was like, no, like that does not add up. And this was actually reiterated to police so many times by so many different people. Like Crystal was pretty well known in the community, and she had a lot of friends and acquaintances and people who knew her. And so many people came to the police and they were like, she would not leave without Eli. Like, she just wouldn't. She literally would not leave without Eli. So for this to be reiterated to the police so many times by so many different people was enough for them to start suspecting Brooks, because then they started to question him. Well, if you woke up and she was gone and you assumed she was at her cousin's, wouldn't you just think twice about that assumption for the fact that Eli's still asleep in bed? Like, wouldn't you in your head just think, well, she doesn't normally leave without him, maybe I should give her a call? And Brooks was just like, no, like, it was weird. The investigators started asking everybody who was involved questions about Crystal and Brooks' relationship as a couple, and both Crystal's mum and her sister sort of said that she'd confided in them recently about potentially leaving Brooks and how she didn't feel like he emotionally connected her, how she was just sort of over it. Her sister said that she was told she was just over it, she was sick of the lying, she was sick of the manipulating, and she just wanted out. And then even her mum said she was a bit worried about Brooks being quite controlling, and Crystal was a little bit, not afraid, but a little bit cautious of potentially leaving. She felt like she might need to sort of have her ducks in a row before she, makes any moves, because she was a little bit cautious of how he might react. So this was obviously quite a red flag. And then Crystal's brother also spoke up, and he said that they used to fight a lot, they would argue a lot, and a lot of these arguments was Crystal sort of criticizing him or picking him up on like things that he had done wrong, like rightfully so. So these fights would be very, very emotional for Crystal, and like in front of people she would be quite emotional, and Brooks would just be like really detached, again, like just not like really in it. He didn't really give a fuck, he didn't really like care, he didn't seem emotional or like even worried. Like if she was like yapping in his ear, he would literally just like play his games and like not even be bothered. So it was strange. So police do a little bit of digging into Brooks' story about what happened on the Friday that Crystal disappeared off the face of the fucking planet, and they can see that he did visit a service station to fill up his tractor on the Friday afternoon before then heading home and picking up both Crystal and Eli. And then they can see through CCTV footage that he did in fact drive the 20 minutes from their home to his family farm. They can also see that he then left at 5 to midnight, which is pretty close to what Brooks said originally, that he left at midnight to go home. But they also looked into his phone records, and they can see that just after he left, he actually received a phone call from one of his colleagues, and this phone call only lasted 13 seconds. They thought that was a little bit weird, so they decided to ask him about it and just be like, so what's up with this phone call? So when they questioned Brooks about this phone call, he was kind of ready for it. He had a response straight away. It was a little bit defensive, not defensive, but just very like adamant, if that makes sense. I don't know, that's just how I interpreted it. And then he basically offers to call up his friend. He's like, oh, I'll call him up. Like, he can tell you exactly what he said to me, like thinking that that would just clear everything up.
It was a pretty short phone conversation is the only reason I asked it. Kind of unusual to get a 13-second phone conversation at midnight.
Hey, I need your help while I got you on the phone here. Do you remember the other night you called me really late? And I forgot what you asked me. Can you remember what you asked me?
Sure, I can. I called and asked you for them numbers for a house.
Oh, for a rental house.
Yes, sir,
And
I did.
I forgot. What did I tell you?
You said you handled all that, and that you would get back with me on it.
All right. Thank you so much, Nell.
And then they hang up, and the detectives immediately suspected that this phone call was like pre-scripted, like it was already planned. They knew what they were going to say. Like, it was so obviously not real. So the detective actually thought that this phone call in particular that he had just made himself and offered to make was enough evidence to basically support his theory that Crystal was not in that truck on the way home after midnight. Like when Brooks left, he was not with Crystal. And he basically summed this up because like, if his mate had caught up about rental properties that Crystal, like, runs or whatever, wouldn't you just hand the phone over to Crystal and get her to talk about it? Like, that was weird, for one. He basically questioned Brooks and was like, well, if Crystal was sitting right next to you in the truck and you get a phone call that only Crystal can answer, why didn't you ask Crystal? Why didn't you give the phone to Crystal? Like, it was weird. Everything was weird in this story. Everything that Brooks has said up to this point is just fucking weird. Then Brooks gets a phone call from his brother, who just so happens to be a police officer. And this is mid-interview, by the way.
Can I get this? Sure. Hello. I know that, but the way that I look at it is I'm innocent. I ain't done nothing wrong. I'll do exactly what you're telling me to do right now. You want me to get up and leave?
Now, I said this before, but I'll say it again. The community in this story is just fucking, like, amazing. As soon as they left, the detectives start getting all these phone calls from multiple people that's like, hey, I just saw Brooks' truck and his brother's little police car, whatever, drive to the farm. They're following each other. They got multiple phone calls that was like, hey, they're at the farm. Should they be at the farm? I don't think so. Like, how sus is that he's just questioned about the farm, about Crystal never leaving the farm. So what's he do? Drives straight to the fucking farm with his police cop brother. What, to hide some evidence? To get rid of a body? Like, what? So the investigators were like, okay, well, we need to question his brother. He obviously knows something. He's obviously helping in some way to cover this up, if it is a cover up. Like, that's what's happening here. So they decide to bring in his brother for questioning, and his brother's name is Nick. And Nick literally is just like, I don't remember. I could have been at the farm that day. I could have not been at the farm that day. It is possible that I was at the farm that day after my brother got finished being interviewed, but I don't remember.
Do you remember going out to the farm the evening of July the 8th?
I don't, but I very easily could have been out there. I do, I tell you. I mean, I wish I could give you a detailed written statement. I don't know.
How ridiculous. So they give him a lie detector test, and by now we all know that lie detector tests are like, they're not very reliable, they're not admissible in court, there's ways of passing them, like, whatever. But they give him a lie detector test and he passes everything except for any question that involves Crystal. So, it's a little bit sus. They asked, are you hiding any information about Crystal? Fail. Do you know where Crystal is? Fail. And then when he was told that he failed and they asked him like, hey, you just failed, can you please be truthful? Like, whatever. He kind of lost his shit. He got really, really angry. He started like going off his head, started swearing. He's like, I am being truthful, I fucking am, I'm fucking honest. Like, it's funny.
I don't give a what your computer said, okay?
I think you do.
I'm telling you that I have been 100% honest with you.
What an actual crazy person. What a ridiculous reaction to failing a test. And because of this, and because of his suspected involvement in all the shit that was going on, he was actually fired in court by a judge. Like, he wasn't fired from like his boss, a judge actually had to fire him. So Nick was no longer a part of the Bardstown police station, thank fuck. So now they had to search this farm, which was huge, by the way. It was like something like 140 acres, which is just like, that is huge. And so this took a considerable amount of time. This is why they didn't do it sort of immediately. They hoped they would get somewhere first, because it'll just take an astronomically long time compared to what they want. You know what I mean? There had been a fire the other night. They had to look through all these ashes, and they had to look through all these different parts of the farm and all these different like, it was a big deal, and they didn't really find anything. And at the same time that they started this search of the farm, Crystal's dad decided to start his own search. And this is what makes this story even more fucking crazy. And I love it. I hate, like, it's horrible, but like, I love how crazy it is. So Crystal's dad took this really, really, really seriously. He literally spent every waking minute working on this case. He set up a whole office. He had like one of those police boards with like the fucking, you know, shit I'm so good at describing things. He had all the information in this office. He worked really, really, really hard. He did his own interviews. He also used, like, obviously the police interviews and the information given from the police. He was so full on. He had his heart set on finding out what the fuck happened to Crystal. At this point, he was going through CCTV footage himself. He was scanning through phone calls, going through statements. Like, it was just, like, it was really full on. It was seriously like his full-time job, except he didn't go home at the end of the day. He continued doing it. Like, it was intense. And it was actually really, really lucky that he developed a really good relationship with the head investigator, like with the lead detective in the case. So everything that the police actually did find, they would sort of relay that back to him so that he could continue his own investigation, which is super abnormal. It's not usual for the detectives to, like, promote or encourage or assist family members when they do this, but for some reason they had a really good relationship, which I think is just really cool. Like, that's awesome, because it made him feel like he was doing his part, which if he hadn't have been so helpful, I feel like could have really impacted him. I don't know, I just think that's really cool. Now, this is the crazy thing, is that the reason he felt so, like, intense and determined about this, obviously because he loves and misses Crystal and he's worried about her and wants to know what happened, and everyone does. But the thing is, his own sister actually went missing years ago. This is the second time that he's had to deal with this, like, having a family member missing and not knowing what's going on and, like, leaving it all in the hands of police. Like, he's already been through this. So back then when the sister went missing, one of the family friends was, like, the lead suspect, and there was just something funny there, and everybody knew it. The whole entire family knew that this family friend had something to do with the sister disappearing. The police knew it, the community knew it, like, everybody knew it. But he remembered how hard and, like, difficult it was to actually not pin it on him, but, like, it's very hard for the police to gather enough evidence to, like, concretely say that, hey, this person had something to do with it. So he remembers how difficult that was for the police, and he remembers how hard that was for everybody to know and yet not do anything. So in this case, when he sees how suspicious Brooks is, and there's all these clues, but it's, like, not concrete, he was like, I am not doing this again. I am not having everybody know that it was Brooks, but we can't do anything. Now, if that isn't heartbreaking enough, and I feel like that's pretty heartbreaking, like, this huge family, they're so close, they're so full of love, they're so full of community, like, they're the kindest friggin' people ever. Like, it's such a big family. They've already lost their aunt, and it was a whole thing, and now they've lost Crystal. Like her siblings love and miss her, her kids love and miss her, her cousins and aunts and uncles and parents, everybody loves and misses her, and it's horrible. Well, it's about to get worse. Crystal's dad felt like he was getting very close to something. He felt like he was really progressing in his investigation, and he felt like he was, like, so close to getting him. Like, he really felt like he was on something, and he got excited about this, and he told his brother, and he mentioned it to one or two of his friends, and, like, a tiny portion of the family. He didn't want to get anyone's hopes up. He didn't want to get his own hopes up and say, look, I've got all this evidence, and then nothing be done with it. So he didn't go, like, full on. He tried to keep it on the down low, but because he was making this really great progression, he sort of slowed down how much he was working on the case, and he tried to spend some time with family because he really felt like he had something. Like, he was like it's done, you know what I mean? So he decided to spend some time with family. So he decided to take Crystal's 11-year-old son, so his grandson, out on a little hunting trip, and they decided that they'd invite Casey, which was Crystal's brother, and his son as well, so it's going to be like a little family bonding whatever thing. So they go out and they start, like, setting up for hunting. I don't really know what that entails, but Casey and his son, they pull up to the property and they hear a gunshot, and then Casey sees that his phone's ringing and it's his dad, so he picks up, and on the other end of the phone isn't actually his dad, it's Crystal's 11-year-old son, and he just says, someone shot Grandpa in the back. from there, basically hell breaks loose. Obviously Casey and that like run to the scene, like this 11-year-old's right there. He's just lost his mum and now he's just seen his grandpa being shot in the fucking back, like from behind. Like that's horrible. And then the whole family arrive at the same time as the police and the ambulance arrive, and everyone is just like, what is going on? They saw Tommy, which was Crystal's dad, with a sheet over his head, and they all just instantly knew that he was gone, and it was the most gut-wrenching thing ever. He was like a huge part of the family. Like he's the dad, like he brings everyone together. He makes sure everyone is like checking up on each other and, you know, there for each other, and now he's gone. Again, in front of an 11-year-old who just lost their mum. Like, oh my god. So they immediately start an investigation into his death, and they rule out suicide straight away because his gun hadn't actually even been set off yet, so they knew that he didn't do it. And they believed that it wasn't an accident because the property that they were like hunting on was their own private property, so it's not like there's other like hunters around, so there's no way someone could have like thought he was an animal or something and shot him. Like they ruled out an accident and they ruled out suicide. And they not only suspected foul play, because like obviously it's foul play, but they suspected that he had been sniped. Like, what? He had one shot straight to his chest and he died instantly from this shot in his chest. Like that is really full on. And he was shot the like second that the 11-year-old son had gone to the car to get water. So he was literally like, someone was watching them and waited until the kid had like stepped away and then shot him. Like that is so planned. And the lead investigator, like he knew him, and it's horrible. And he was like, yeah, the chances of it being a homicide are like 99%, not his words, but you know what I mean. And it's just going to be very, very hard to ever prove that this is a homicide unless we sort of prove Crystal's case, because there's no doubt in my mind that the cases are like correlated, but until we prove Crystal's, it's going to be very hard to prove his, which is like, it's just another like blow to the family that not only is he like shot and killed and it's planned so perfectly, but they can't prove that either. And especially if it is the same person, it's like, how much more can this one person or group of people take from our family? You know what I mean? Like, it's horrible. And the family believed that Tommy was killed purely because he had like stumbled across something that like he was just too close to cracking open the case, or at least giving the police what they needed to crack open the case. And you know, the investigators agreed to an extent, saying that they do believe he was killed because of how outspoken he was about the case, and maybe he should have, you know, kept things to himself a little bit more, kept it on the down low. Because, I mean, I guess they didn't go and kill the lead investigators, like they didn't go kill the police. So maybe had he have like kept it purely to himself so that no one else could see, no one else could know, maybe they wouldn't have known that he was so close. I don't know. It's horrible either way. Most people in the community, in the family, they believe that it was Nick, which was Brooke's house brother. The police officer, he had the skill, he had the, you know, knowledge to do it and carry it out and hide the evidence, and it's scary. And this is how the case was left off, with more questions than there will ever be fucking answers. With a heartbroken family, a grieving family, a confused, angry, terrified family, and no Crystal, and now no Tommy. And this case just literally kills me, because how do you disappear off the face of the earth? How is there no evidence? How can Tommy be killed like in front of the... Oh, this case kills me, dude. This is the unsolved disappearance of Crystal Rogers and the death of Tommy Ballard. Let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments down below. I really want to know what you think about this one, because I'm like so amazed by this case. I just think this is such an incredible case, truly. I hope that I did it enough justice in this video. Probably not, because just probably not. I want to know who you think did it. What do you think about Brooks? Do you think he's innocent? I fucking don't, just to put it out there. What do you think about his brother? What do you think about the story? What do you think about Tommy? Do you think he knew something that was like gonna pin the case on someone? Like, what do you think? Please let me know in the comments down below, or you can head over to my Facebook, which is skyweb with 3 B's, and let me know there. I also have a Twitter and an Instagram, which is linked in the description. If you want to message me there instead, feel free. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you feel like it. I would really appreciate it, and be sure to subscribe so that you can see all my new videos. I post every single Thursday all about true crime, and I would love to have you be a part of it. Make sure you guys are being safe out there. Never date a man called Brooks. Never date a man who has a cop brother, and most importantly, never go to a farm, because you will disappear off the face of the planet of the earth. And that's scary. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!